Good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome. My name is Natural Love, and I'm the Assistant Director for Community Engagement with the Office for Community and Civic Engagement at UNC Pembroke. Today, I'm via WebEx with Patricia Lewis, Program Specialist at Guardian at Litem of Robeson County for the Community Engagement Virtual Workshop Series. This series was designed to emphasize the community partner and student experience by providing networking opportunities and collaboratively engaging in strengths-based efforts to further support community partnership and UNCP student volunteers. So I would like to share with you all a bit about Ms. Patricia Lewis. So Patricia Lewis is a 1998 UNCP graduate with a BA in history, currently working within the NC Administrative Office of the Courts through Guardian at Litem or GAL in Robeson County. She spent 8 years as an administrative associate for departments in both the UNCP School of Education and School of Arts and Sciences prior to joining GAL in 2018. She has also worked for the Robeson County Partnership for Children, Smart Start, as a program specialist and Robeson County Girl Scouts as a program assistant conducting after-school enrichment programs for children throughout the county. She has numerous volunteer experiences both as a teenager and in her adult life. In the past 20 years, she volunteered with a variety of organizations such as Robeson County Girl Scouts, Rape Crisis Center of Robeson County, an individual Cub Scout troop, and the National Rise Against Hunger Initiative. Additionally, Ms. Lewis established the David K. Elad's Memorial Scholarship through the UNCP History Department to help support the educational and career aspirations of deserving students. Currently, she serves her community as a member of the Robeson Healthcare Corporation Board of Directors, where she can help impact the quality of health outcomes for all community members at the regional level. So for today, you all, I ask that you all engage with us, share any questions, any comments in our chat box. I will do my best to help Trish manage that as we get to the Q&A portion of her presentation. We ask that you all just be present with us today, take in some information that you may or may not know. And during today's presentation, just open your minds to all there is to know about Guardian at Litem and how Ms. Patricia Lewis, or whom I like to call Trish, got involved in this type of work. So hello, Trish.
Hello, hello. It's nice to be with everybody today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes. So, where to start? I guess we can just kind of dive right on in.
Okay.
So the part of the Guardian Ad Litem program in North Carolina is known as District 16B. There are districts that serve every county in the state. Some districts incorporate more than one county, but Robeson County is a standalone district. So we are District 16B if you ever go to look us up. Go to the next slide. So this is one of the things that I really enjoy about Guardian Ad Litem is whenever you look at this slide, you see the engagement of people, adults with children. And obviously some of these children are probably not the children of the adults that you see in this picture. And that's because these folks are Guardian Ad Litem volunteers. And so they're working with children who are in the program. So what our volunteers are, they are community members who represent the best interest of those children in court. So you can see how listed on here, they are trained. They are advocates who work with attorneys to report on the needs of the students and then, or I'm sorry, the children. And then they, their ultimate goal is to promote the child living in a safe, stable home, a permanent home. And generally that is they're with their parents, their actual kin family. Sometimes that ends up being a different type of home, but permanency is what we're after. You can go to slide 3. So our role in Guardian Ad Litem as far as the volunteer is concerned, is something of an investigator and a collaborator, and someone who is involved with the other people involved in the case to get information, all the details that are pertinent to that child's life, everything from their educational needs, their health needs, the financial needs of their family, cultural needs. Any kind of information that is pertinent to understanding what that child needs as far as being a healthy, happy child. And of course, since all children are different, the needs of every child is going to be different, even children within the same family. So what the GAL advocate, what the volunteer does is they look to make sure that that child, who could be anywhere from an infant, a newborn, to a teenager getting ready to enter adulthood, they want to make sure that that child is heard in court. That could be literally, it could be figuratively, but they want to give that child's voice um, a chance to be heard in the case that determines what is going to happen in their life. So empower the child's voice, but also work with that child, hopefully through the completion of their case. And that generally might take about a year. It could take longer, but you want the continuity of representing that child. So if a volunteer can work with the child from the beginning of their case through to the end, to the point that they achieve permanency, that is the ideal, because they really get to know that child. And of course, there is the aspect of confidentiality, because of course we're working with children who are probably already in a vulnerable situation, but of course, living in a society where is often the kind of thing that people want to use for various reasons, and sometimes nefarious reasons, keeping all kinds of records confidential is definitely something that is a key aspect of service. And so you can go to that next slide. So what qualifies someone to be a guardian ad litem volunteer advocate? And really, if you look over this, we're not asking anybody for a certain education level, a certain type of experience. We are looking for something that is more a character aspect. I want you to be 18 years of age because you need to be an adult, but we look more carefully at what is your background. You need to look, and by background we mean, what is your criminal background? Are you someone who can pass a criminal record check, a sex offender registry check? Are you someone who has some things in your background that would make it probably not a good idea to have children? So there's that aspect of the qualification. You also have to have a driver's license, because you have to go out into the community to actually visit these children and see them in their placements, whether they are still with their family, which could be parents, grandparents, whoever that is, or if they are with someone else or a foster placement time, you need to be able to go to that child where they are. Again, helps maintain confidentiality. So those are the three big things: your age, the ability to pass the background check, and the license, the valid license. But those are the things that are hard and fast, and you can actually put your finger on and say, you have to have these things. The other items are a little bit more of the intangibles. Do you have a concern for the well-being of children? are you committed to advocating for a child until they get to that situation that they need to be in, that permanent, established, stable home? Are you able to be objective and non-judgmental? Do you have an appreciation and a competency in recognizing culture and the importance of culture? Can you interact with people from all walks of life and different kinds of backgrounds in a way that is affirming to them, respectful of them, um, that kind of goes across all the kinds of demographics and ethnicities and levels of education and experience? Are you able to communicate with those people, whoever they are, wherever they are? And your verbal and written skills. Certainly the verbal skills are important whenever you're communicating one-on-one with people, but you also need those communication skills that make it possible for you to conduct interviews, but also to get that information from those interviews down in a format which we use as a court report and monthly contact reports that conveys the information that's needed to actually, what is this child's situation and what are the needs that we can see based on all of this information that we have. So the ability to communicate both in person and in some type of written format is key. But aside from that, we don't care what your education level is. We don't care what, your profession might be, or if you ever worked outside of the home. We don't worry about those things. It's the other items, or the character type items that really tell us if you are the kind of person who could be a guardian ad litem volunteer advocate. And you can go to the next one. So for those people who decide that they want to pursue this as a volunteer enterprise, what you would do is you would go and take that first step of submitting an application. And it is a pretty lengthy application. Again, we try to make sure that we get as much pertinent information up front about the person who we are potentially entrusting to help us take care of kids, and take care of kids who are already in something of a questionable situation. They're already in crisis, so to speak. So you have the application. There are a few things in the application that will kind of let us know if this person may or may not work. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to screen you right out, but if you, for instance, put on there that you have a criminal record that involves some type of, child abuse, but chances are you wouldn't come to us in the first place. But again, you have the background check, and those checks include state and federal sex offender checks and criminal record checks, state and federal. And, or at least GAL is moving to state and federal as we speak for the criminal record check. In the past, it was based on how many years you had lived in North Carolina. If it was 5 or more years, it was just a North Carolina check. If it was less than that, then it was a federal check. Now we're going to be moving to both of those. And then once we get, and there's also an RIL process, and basically that's a responsible individuals list. That is a form that one would complete, and then they would send it, we send it to the state for processing. And what we want to see is that you come back as not being on the responsible individuals list, because that name is a little bit of a misnomer. If you are on it, it means you are responsible for a pretty serious, maybe even heinous type of crime. So the negative result is what you want on that. So those are the 3 levels of background check that we do. And then there is also, at the point that you made it through the entire application process up to the point where we are considering whether or not you should be trained, then there is a screening interview, and that is a face-to-face generally interview that is just a series of questions, basically kind of gauging one's maybe appropriateness for this type of volunteering. Once accepted, person determines that yes, they really do want to pursue this, then they agree to sign on to 30 hours of pre-service training. I don't know of any other volunteer position that is quite as structured and really, I mean, there's a lot that goes into preparing that volunteer before they ever get a case. So that 30 hours of training covers an awful lot. It covers legal processes, such as what the case looks like as it travels through all the processes from the initial petition being filed all the way through closing. The training includes things on cultural competency, child development, how to gather information from all the kinds of sources that you might encounter whenever you're looking at a child's life. And it goes through things like confidentiality and professionalism whenever you're looking at representing um, basically the judicial system, because we are a branch of that, as we are part of the administrative office of the courts. So there's a lot that goes into that training. It's certainly not, we walk you around, show you a few forms, have you check out the copy machine, and then put you out there. We really spend a lot of time in preparing you as best we can. But it's also with the understanding that there's a lot that you learn simply by doing. And while we give you a chance and train to have them hands-on, you will really learn so much more just in the first few months of working a case, how to document things and how to get them on paper and write court reports and things like that. So that 30 hours is the initial piece. What you have whenever you're actually assigned a case is we consider about 8 hours a month of casework. And that's where you're going to be emailing people, interviewing people, phone calls, reading reports. Maybe it's a criminal report, maybe it's a home study, maybe it's some other type of documentation that's pertinent to the child. Maybe it could be an IEP for a child. So there's all those things that would be the investigative piece, the collaborative piece. And of course, most importantly, having contact with that child. It should happen at least once a month. And generally would only happen about once a month unless something happens, like a child needs to move to a different placement or some issue arises with that child and you actually need to talk to them or see them. But generally speaking, it's you see that child once a month, and the rest of your work is going to be collaboration, investigation, and monitoring. And then, of course, getting your paperwork together for monthly contact reports and court reports as they are needed. Again, I mentioned the estimated commitment for a case is a year, but sometimes this lasts longer. Sometimes they only last a couple of months. So it's hard to say. It always depends on. And as with the training, GAL is very unusual at least as far as I've experienced, in the amount of supervision and support that the volunteers receive. They are assigned a supervisor. They work with that supervisor on a monthly basis. They stay in touch. If they have needs, they communicate with that supervisor, and that person helps them. Um, they staff cases together to determine what is in the child's best interest. Are there concerns? Maybe you have a visit and you see that something just isn't right. Maybe you want to contact that supervisor and talk it out. So there is a lot of structure, and there is a lot of training that goes into this. And as you see, there is continued education for that advocate. So not only do you have that 30 hours of pre-service training, but you have the expectation that you are going to maintain and grow your experience through additional training each year. And that's usually about 12 hours a year. And one of the interesting things about that is GAL is required to provide half of that training for the volunteers. And one way that we've done that here in Robeson County kind of goes back to the relationship that Natural mentioned whenever she was talking about my past experience. Having worked at the university, um, it put me in a position to bring some of those relationships that I built at the university into the world of theater. One of the privileges I had at the university was working in School of Education with the Educational Specialties Department, and let's see, there were actually two other departments because there were three at one time, but those departments were able to give me the chance to offer GAL a partnership, so to speak, with the university, so that counseling programs that I had worked with were willing to open up their annual conference to GAL volunteers at no charge. Um, there were some other conferences that happened within the School of Education that, again, were opened up to our people at no charge. So instead of having to rely on maybe outside opportunities that might take people out of the county, or just online opportunities, we were able to um, create a new relationship with some departments to broaden the training opportunities there at the university. And this built upon something that was already in existence, because with the close connection between guardian ad litem advocacy work and the social work departments, our volunteers already had the chance to take advantage of conferences that the social work department and the sociology and criminal justice departments offered. So my relationship was able to broaden that a little bit and bring in some other aspects. So that continuing education not only happens in our county with experts in our county, experts right there at UNCP, but it also creates other online opportunities. And there is a CASA college. CASA is I want to say it's kind of like the parent organization of all guardian ad litem type activities in the country. And so they have what is called CASA College, and so there are training opportunities that are offered there that are virtual. And so we really do give our volunteers a broad range of continuing education training. So I think I've probably exhausted the training part, but I think it's really good to note that these I'm sorry, got tongue tied, that these opportunities are broad. They cover a lot of different issues, anything that might impact a child at any given point in their life, whether it's their identity, their educational needs, their health needs, their, whether that's physical, mental health, or things that may impact them like, say, human trafficking, or issues that might come up in social work, how the law applies to different aspects of a child's life. So it really is broad, it really is structured, and it's probably one of the few volunteering programs where you get that much of a push to really make sure that you are building and enhancing your skills. I think we can go to the next one. So this is a really good question. And the answer to this is really going to depend on the individual, right? Why volunteer? Why does anybody volunteer? For Guardian ad litem, you see that, and these numbers might be based on 2018, 2019 information, but at the time there were more than 2,400 children in North Carolina who did not have an advocate assigned to them to represent their needs in court. Now, some counties, the volunteer advocate actually testifies in court. In Robeson County, we generally rely on a court report that the volunteer generates. It follows a template. Again, we are big on structure, but that is the volunteer's testimony. And our reputation is such that the judges and the attorneys rely on that. They accept that. So it's wonderful to have that volunteer who can represent that child. Otherwise, it's a guardian ad litem supervisor, and you just don't get quite the same level of attention whenever it's a supervisor who has a pretty large caseload as opposed to a volunteer. So whenever you look at that number, there are nearly 2,500 children in this state who need a volunteer. They need somebody to be that voice. And we tell people that you could be that. You could be that voice. You could be the person who helps express what that little person right there needs and wants. And sometimes they don't even know how to express it. We'll help teach you how to tease some of those things out. But it's the volunteer who really gives them that voice, because everybody in the room is making decisions about them. They're generally not in there, or even if they are in there, they may not be heard themselves. So it's the volunteer that provides that. And that is what we need, because it's every person's responsibility. When you look at it from a community standpoint, we are all responsible for the health and well-being of the children in our community. That's why you have the mandatory reporter law in North Carolina. Whoever you are, you have a mandate to report abuse if you see it, child abuse, whether you are a teacher or somebody just out in the community, you are a mandatory reporter. So it is one of these very profound opportunities to be responsible in your community in a big way. But you get to do it one child at a time or one family at a time. So again, it is a community responsibility to stand up and give a voice for these children and look out for their best interests. So we can go to the next one. So that kind of brings us, we looked at the state, now we're kind of looking a little bit more closely at Robeson County. And you can see from those numbers of last fiscal year, we served nearly 600 children. Now, there were well over 2,000 court hearings. And the stats for this year are probably going to be a little bit bigger than that because let's see, we ended probably at well over 400 cases in 2019. So we're probably going to be around that same number, 600 children again, I would anticipate this year, because we had we have about 160 odd children already that are brand new cases this year. So whenever I talk about 400 some odd cases from 2019, those are cases that opened, brand new cases that opened in 2019. And then you have, in addition to that, any that opened the first half of this year, because we operate on that July to June calendar. So it looks like we are definitely on track to at least be on par with that number for the 1920 year. So hopefully we'll have those stats in the next month or so. But I can tell you just from experience this year, there was a huge uptick in cases, and there was a point where we just couldn't keep up with all the stuff that was coming in. So that meant that we've always kind of had a hard time in Robeson County meeting demand for volunteers because there's a huge need. And there are also some barriers here. You have a lot of folks who, for one reason or another, they're not able to do this kind of service. It can be, financial needs, or maybe they're looking out for family or something like that, and they just don't have the time. But whatever it is, we generally are in need of a good pool of volunteers. And so, as you can see, we have 437 children in active cases right now. So that number is probably still in the ballpark, even if it's, give or take a few here or there. But only 87 of those had a volunteer assigned to them. And so what that means is 350 children are relying on a supervisor to advocate for their needs. And while our supervisors are great people, they are as dedicated and passionate as you could ever ask for. But they can't handle representing the needs and really giving 180 children each the advocacy that they need. And that's my husband walking through, so forgive me. He's letting the dog, relieving the dog. So anyway, it's the joys of working at home. So, but what you see here then is there is a huge need for volunteers. There's a need across the state, but especially so in Robeson County. We have a lot of children who could really benefit from having a volunteer who really gets to know them personally and becomes the expert on them and their situation and can really speak to what they need. You can go to the next slide. So that brings us to the question part, and I feel like I probably rambled on a lot longer than I intended. So I'm happy to take whatever questions y'all may have.
Trish, I just wanted to say, and I was going to bring it up in your previous slides, but I said, no, I'm going to wait until we get to the end. But I mean, just speaking on my experience as being a guardian and Litem volunteer, and going back to what you mentioned just about like the social work students, like I gained so much perspective and insight. it was one of those things at first, of course, like you said, the 30 hours, I was like, man, you know, college student, I'm working, do I have time? Like that was my first question. But then after that, and I just started to do some deep thinking and reflecting, I said, you know, it's really not about me in this case. Like it's really about the child.
Right.
Like the child, you know, needs someone there just to support them and be there for them. And I knew like that was a skill that I wanted to develop. Have, you know, then I didn't have any nieces or nephews. Now I have some because of my husband, but it was something that I knew I wanted to gain. I wanted to work with, you know, a smaller group of children just to kind of get my skills built. And going through the training, I think the thing that I enjoyed the most, Trish, about it was the fact that we got to do different exercises and just different, just discussion and interaction within the class. I want to say I had about maybe about 8 to 10 of us who went through my group.
That's a nice
And
group.
yeah, it was really nice. And I enjoyed it so much because we got to, you know, listen to, I want to say Amy, the director there, she was the one who kind of oversaw our training. And there was someone else, and I cannot remember his name, but he was a facilitator, and they did amazing because they really got us thinking about, you know, how do you first volunteer? Like, what skills do you have? We went through some practice cases. We went through some practice, like, what would be your next step in this? And talking us through, okay, well, what are our steps as we're going out into the field? And I can honestly say a lot of the skills that I gained through the training and through being a volunteer, like I was able to apply not only to just my overall experience, like my own personal experience, but professionally, going to another internship after I, you know, graduated and things, like I got a chance to then reflect on my skills from GAL and just think about like how great, truly how great of a program it is. I love going to see my children, and I hate, you know, with my own personal life and professional life, you know, time isn't always on our side. But I can say oftentimes I do think about, you know, how are they? Or, you know, how is the family? What was the outcome? That is something I truly do miss because it was a chance where when I went to visit, I didn't have to be this adult natural who was so used to being professional. Like I got to be kid-like. I got to talk with them. I got to play with them. You know, I got a chance to just be. Yeah.
I think you make a really good point there. As the volunteer, you have to meet that child where they are. And it's not just, we're not just talking about a physical location here. We're talking about where are they in their mind, developmentally and emotionally. And one of the exercises, I'm sure you remember this from training, is it's a bit of role playing. How do you interview a 6-year-old? How do you interview a teenager who really just doesn't want to be bothered with you? You know, why do you care about me? You know, and you look at it because you have to kind of come at it from their point of view. And as adults, we don't do that as much maybe as we should, or we don't do it unless that's something that we have to do, you know, often. And even as a parent, you can forget, you know, to come down to their level. And so I think that's one of the great things about the training is it gives you the chance to use some of those skills that we're teaching you and use it in a place where it's safe and you're going to get feedback and you're going to get constructive feedback, not just somebody going, "Oh, you did a terrible job." No, we're talking about what you did well, maybe what you can build on or improve, you know, but it gives you that experience of thinking about it. So whenever you actually go to do it for real, it's not the first time doing it. It's not the first, even if it might be the first time you're doing it with that child or a child. It's not the first time you had to go through this maybe with somebody who doesn't want to talk or hasn't quite warmed up to you. It gives you, I think our trainings give you a lot of opportunity in a structured, safe way to be able to get some of this under your belt, so to speak, before you go out into the field and do it.
I do actually have a couple of questions, Trish, that kind of stem as you were going through your presentation.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so I had a few, but I'm not going to ask as many as I had now. Okay, let me look at what I want to ask. I guess like for you, Trish, like in your current role, how does that look for you? Like what is your day to day
Ah,
at
well,
work?
you know, um, one of the things about um, this this work is no day is quite like any. They're all a little bit different. I mean, you have those, you have your standard duties and stuff, but every day is its own ride. And especially with the whole pandemic thing, that's kind of taken on a whole completely different level of novelty. We'll call it novelty. Um, but one of the things my day to day is essentially it is making sure that the petitions that come in, they are processed in a timely manner. And that process includes activating party in the court case in our database. Um, Nobody knows who the social worker is in court if I haven't put them in the system. Um, I assign all of those people. So I assign the case to the GAL supervisor. I assign it to their volunteers when they designate that a case is going to a volunteer. So you could kind of look at it as I'm the person who processes the paperwork as it comes in. Now, I also have a supervisory role, but I don't supervise nearly as many volunteers as the others, and I don't take on nearly as many cases as the other supervisors do, because I have the administrative role as well. Um, so whenever there's a high volume of cases that are opening, I'm the one that's processing those. Um, when it comes to updating the child's information, say their placement, the social workers that are attached to their case, anything like that, that comes through me. I maintain the volunteer files and the, um, anybody who applies. I process that applicant and, you know, kind of see them along the way until they get to the point where they go to the district administrator for the up or down vote. Um, and then I do, as I'm doing here, the community education, recruitment, um, volunteer appreciation. One of the things we did in April. April was Volunteer Appreciation Month, and so we had an online campaign, Facebook campaign, where we were being good, we were being safe and practicing social distancing and all of that, but we put signs out in the yards of a lot of our volunteers of a special volunteer lives here, a special person lives here. I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but we took those pictures and we posted them on Facebook, and we just did kind of like this community campaign, like, have you seen this sign in your yard? And a spectacular kind of person lives here, um, this is children's hero lives here. This is somebody who, I think there was one I said, something like, not all heroes wear capes, but our heroes carry GAL badges or something like that, just to give them the shout out, to let them know that they're appreciated and things like that. So, so my job really is administrative, it's clerical, it's educational in that, informing the community, it's recruitment. It really is. I think they say program specialist because they don't have anything that really encompasses that without having to list off, this is everything you do. But it's kind of the hub, if you will. Everything comes in to me and then goes out from there. And so it's really a hard kind of job to pin down in just a few sentences there. I I hope I did it justice there.
Interest too. I'm just thinking about just like our campus community and the, I guess the Pembroke Robeson County community as a whole.
Mhm.
What would you encourage, whether it's someone like myself or Lucas on the call, like what would you encourage some of us to say to just some students that we work with who say, you know, naturally I'm interested in working with Guardian Ad Litem, or if it's like a staff member who says to us, like, I'm interested in partnering with Guardian Ad Litem on these projects, like what would you encourage us to say to them, or what would be like our next step to get them in contact with you all?
If anybody is interested in the opportunities that Guardian Ad Litem presents, either for volunteering, for research, for, anything like that, because I know sometimes faculty members and students too, they're going to have a need for research. And so that might be something that people might look at us for. Um, I would say just reach out to us. Um, we always need volunteers, certainly, but we're also always looking for ways to expand our reach, um, expand our circle of collaborators, people who maybe, for instance, say you're someone who you're interested in volunteering, but maybe you see that this isn't necessarily your niche, but you know somebody. Send them our way. Put them in touch with me, and I'll be happy to get them in touch with an application. Um, but there are people who have a lot of things to offer, and we are always willing to look at that person and what they have to offer and see, is it something that we can really work together and have that benefit everybody. Um, our biggest one is definitely the volunteer, but it's not the only way people can be involved with GAL. We have a recruitment committee. Um, and sometimes it's together and sometimes it isn't. It just depends on if we have people who can really give it that time. So there are lots of things that people can do that could be supportive, even if they couldn't volunteer. Or there might be ways that we can help people meet their goals. Again, like maybe if somebody needs research, maybe there's a way that we can help people in that. It's always come talk to us and let us see how we can work together to benefit Robeson County's children.
So much. I didn't know you all had like the recruitment, and I find that so important as I think about like just the diverse students, and then just with my role, like working with community partners like you all, just thinking about, as maybe faculty are processing different ways, whether it's through service learning or whether it's students saying, hey, I'm a business student and I need hours, whether that's connecting them with you all and just kind of having a conversation about what it is that they could actually contribute. Because I think oftentimes, maybe sometimes students, or even community partners, even some staff maybe, like that connector piece, like thinking about like what actually can I do at an organization who on the outside looking in might look like it caters towards social work students or counseling students, but when they actually come in there, like there's opportunities, as you said, like research, recruitment committees, and everything else and programming that you all have there. So can you share too, Trish, just like what are some other projects or some other opportunities that you all have offered like in the past, or some new ideas you all are thinking about offering?
Well, before the pandemic, I had talked to some of the faculty in the counseling programs about a potential service learning. And part of that was research. And I think they had some other ideas as far as, directly related to counseling, ways that maybe we could help meet common, maybe not common goals, meet related goals. So I think service learning is something that is possible. It's not in place yet, and so it would have to be built, right? But I think that's definitely something that I see in our future, because me personally, I see a need for research into volunteerism, volunteerism in rural communities, volunteerism in economically depressed communities, volunteerism in majority minority communities. We hit all of those. How does maybe even something, just trying to think of a different discipline, look at with criminal justice. How does maybe a program like Guardian Ad Litem impact criminal justice? How does that impact the world that these children navigate as far as the justice system? I'm sure there's probably lots of different areas, because whenever you look at what we look at, we deal with a child's health, we deal with their education, we deal with their physical well-being and mental well-being and emotional well-being. We look at their culture. We look at all the things that impact that child. So if there is a discipline, maybe it's education, maybe it's you could even look at these children and their performance in school, and then how does that project out later on to community outcomes? How does that impact, you know, the school to prison pipeline that is, you know, a really scary thing that has grown over the past, I guess, maybe decade. I'm not sure if it's more than that. There are, I think, lots of different opportunities. It just takes sitting down and talking about what we do and how we do it, and the needs of that program as far as the service learning goes, and see where can we meet up and benefit each other. Because I think if we do benefit each other, ultimately, we're benefiting the entire community, and we're really impacting. I always like to say one of the wonderful things about Guardian Ad Litem is you can impact the entire trajectory of a child's life, and not just theirs, but their children, and so on. If you look at it from the service learning aspect, you can do that for a community. When you look at ways of bringing disciplines together, bringing organizations together that may not have the same mission, but they impact each other and they overlap each other. Whenever you bring those things together, I think you have a lot of potential to really have broad impact and meaningful impact. So I'm looking at it. You could be looking at a volunteer who helps a child or 8 children or even 100 children over the course of their volunteer life. And then you could look at a service learning program who could not only impact all of the children, but impact children elsewhere, because that service learning person is going to take what they have learned into their professional life. They're going to apply it elsewhere. And so you have the benefit extend beyond just District 16B. I know that was probably a roundabout way of answering that, but I think there's so much potential for people to have an impact, whether they volunteer with us or not. I think we have, we are placed at a point where a lot of stuff converges, And so it gives us the opportunity to maybe help a lot of people in that service learning aspect. I think it's something that would be wonderful to explore.
So much. I don't want to keep asking, so Lucas, if you have anything to ask too, feel free to chime in. I just saw one of his comments to Trish and Lucas when you were talking about service learning. He said that you offer some great points, and he's loving this. So kudos to you for just information sharing and everything. But I promise, Trish, this is my last question. I guess just for anybody listening or watching too, I oftentimes think about how I was when I was a student and just trying to figure out like what is that thing for me when I graduate, like what's my purpose, what's my why. So Trish, I asked you like, what's your why? Like, how did you get involved in this type of work, and how has it been meaningful for you?
Um, I was raised to believe that you do something that benefits your community. You leave it better than you found it. And for some of my family, that was involvement in their church. For, my mom and a lot of my mom's family, they were big, huge animal lovers. For my mom, she got me involved in Humane Society, which started me down the path for volunteerism. And that's something that I started with my son with the food drive that we participated in last year. So it's, I guess, could almost say it's a family tradition that you serve your community in some way, shape, or form. Coming at it from a history standpoint, um, the one of the things I see is that there is, whenever you see the patterns of human life, you see things that happen. Maybe it's kind of cyclical or something like that. You see things kind of roll around every so often. One of the things I think moved me is you never know where your impact ends. It goes on forever. So I guess one of the things that got me into this is the idea that in a small way, I can make a difference. I can make a difference in my little circle. And so I started that, and the circle grew, and it grew. And it used to be focused maybe more on education and children. Um, and then they kind of grew together. And for a while, I was at the university, and education was big, you know. And whenever I started the Iliades scholarship, it was on my way leaving the university to come to this, but I still wanted to do something to support the history department because that was my home, um, but to support those people who were seeking their education. And since I couldn't do it directly anymore, I could do it through the scholarship. But it's always been about children and education. When we know better, we do better. When we have the opportunity to learn, we have the opportunity to see our potential and how far that can go, and the wonderful things that it can do to build communities and improve communities. And so that's really where my heart has always gone. It has find a way to do something that makes it better. Not just, I mean, money's great. We all love making some good money. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to look and see that something I did, um, maybe it inspired somebody to go to college. Maybe it helped whenever I was at partnership for children. Maybe it was we gave the parents the skills that they needed to get their child in the position that they were ready to learn when they got to kindergarten, because we had helped take care of some of those other needs that maybe would have been missed. And with Guardian Ad Litem, it's the same thing. Essentially, it's just we're doing it on a bigger scale, a more focused scale, and we're doing it to help people who are in crisis. But if I can help in my role, help that child get to a stable, safe, permanent home, they can then learn, they can grow, they can thrive, they can go out and be a contributing member of society and build and improve their community. And they can do the same for their child and somebody else's child. And it grows. So I guess that's my why. I want to make sure that whatever I leave, I left it a little bit better than whenever I found it. So I think that's probably the best way to put it. I want it to be better than when I found
I do that. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, or wanna
it. I think I would just say that this is one of those organizations. There's kind of a spectrum of volunteering. You have very um, loose kind of impromptu type volunteering, and then you have very focused, intentional, structured volunteering, and this is it. So if people are looking for something that's really more of um, a really big experience with big impact, and not only impact on a child, but impact on, or just that child and their family, but impact on you as the volunteer. I don't think you can find a bigger one, a better one. Um, it'll tug at your heart. It'll make you cry sometimes. It'll make you jump up and down with joy sometimes. And like you said, it's going to make you go, I wonder what happened to. Um, but it'll touch your heart forever. You'll never look at your community the same way again. You'll see the strengths, you'll see the weaknesses, but you'll see the potential too. And you'll see the helpers. And that's great.
I didn't want to skip the slides until you told me to do so, but I said the next one. Here we go. How can we
Yeah,
touch
there I am. There's my,
it?
yeah, you can call me at that number. I also have, I didn't put it on there, so I was remiss in that, but my email address is patricia.lewis@nccourts.org, and that's plural, NC Courts. Um, so you can email me there or just call that number, and we can get the ball rolling if you want to find out about some opportunities.
Trish, I would say just thank you so much just for collaborating with our office and just talking with me, just sharing insight about Guardian and Litem today with us. I can truly attest and say this program is amazing. Just from the experience that it gives you, like you said, it does tug at your heart, especially when I leave.
Yeah.
My kids would come up to me and say, can you stay a little bit longer? And it's always, I gotta go. But I know something you all taught us to not to say, but I'll see you again. I'll see you again soon, because you just never know if you'll be able to come back. So in my case, I left them with, it's bye for now, because I knew, my heart. Trisha telling you, my heart just could not take it. When I left.
It's true.
Because
It's true.
I knew if I didn't have to get home at that time, I knew I would stay longer. Just play.
Look, I can't be around whenever our interns, especially the really good ones, leave. It's like, y'all gotta go. I can't be here because y'all gonna have me crying. It's like but and that was one of the things with Troy. It was like, go away, because if you say bye, I'm just going to be ruined. So, but yeah, it's a wonderful group that we get, and we were so lucky to have you, Troy.
And I can even say too, Trish, for those of you listening and watching, Troy, he's my husband, but Trish, even going back to what you were saying about like volunteerism, Troy started out as, he was an intern. He interned there for about 2 years.
Yes.
Trish, about 2 years.
Yes.
And now he's working in foster care in Cumberland County. So, I mean, it's just funny. I was telling Lucas earlier how transferable those skills were, how
Yes.
kind of the perfect match that job was for him, because he knew how to talk to children. He knew how to get some information out of it. Like, he knew.
He's not scared
the
of a home
process.
visit.
No, not scared at all. He goes there, he's like, I'll be right back. I'm like, okay. Like, there was no worries. So I can say, kind of going back to that, like, Garden and Litem, it's just not, like you said, it's not somewhere where you all just take a stroll around the building. It's where you actually get that real hands-on experience that can be lasting, meaningful, and impactful, not only for you, but for the person that you serve or get to work with. So for that, Trish, I just say thank you for all that you all do in Garden and Litem, and I hope that our partnership continues to grow, that you have with our office, the campus, and just the community in itself.
Well, we are so very proud to have the relationship that we have with the university, because I would say the vast majority of our volunteers, especially the new ones, come through the university. And that's one of the things that I really do appreciate about the generation that is coming through now, and not just them, but I think this is subsequent generations after mine, and I don't want to date myself too, but as a Generation Xer, I think those that have come after me have an even greater appreciation for public service and community service. And I mean community service that comes from the heart, not you're being forced to do community service. But I see that there is a recognition and a passion there, and we see it in our volunteers, how young they are and passionate they are, and they want to make a difference, and they're not scared of jumping in there. They see something, and I think we see this all over the country right now. They see something and they want to fix it, and they're not scared to jump in and get their hands dirty doing it. So yeah, I'm thrilled with the relationship with the university. I'm glad I was able to help, in some way maybe enhance that or expand it a little bit. But my goodness, the university really does send us some good people. So you and Troy were just two of them. But this has been a pleasure. I've loved it.
Thank you. So thank you again to Trish and just sharing insight. For those of you watching or listening, we have our next community engagement virtual workshop. It's going to be on July 1st from 2 to 3 p.m. We're going to be talking with Dr. Asa A. Rebels. She is a community leader and 2 local nonprofits, Stop the Pain and Pause. So join us on July 1st from 2 to 3 p.m. as she gives some insight and perspective on her experience as a community partner, and also about how they mobilize volunteers, and share a little bit of insight about how she got involved in the work that she's doing. So we look forward to seeing you again, and thank you again, Trish, for all that you are doing.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was fun. I loved it.